Hi everyone. So today markets did do pretty much what we thought. We talked about yesterday, short-term bounce. We ended up getting that. Did come up a little bit short, but then we ended up going lower just like we talked about yesterday. Let's take a look at the levels and the medium-term charts, see if we can find anything for tomorrow's session. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. Looking at the fear and greed index, stepping down just slightly again to a 48. Still greed here on momentum, strength, still dipping down, breadth still dipping down. Put call ratio not really going higher. Interesting to see that despite stocks going lower. Volatility continuing to rise there a little bit. Safe haven demand has now dipped into extreme fear. Interesting. Didn't really take very long to get into extreme fear. It's the first indicator to hit it. And you can see junk bonds actually rolling down a little bit back into neutral. So a little bit of mixed data here on the bonds, but overall everything still looks like it's drifting lower. Moving over to the economic calendar, really nothing there for today. 3-year note auction came in pretty much in line with the previous one. Of course, tomorrow, though, we do have all of that CPI data. Definitely going to be interesting. See if we continue to flatline on the core number there. And then for Tuesday, we do have PPI, so a little bit more inflation data. And then the 30-year bond auction and the Fed balance sheet. Moving over to Max Payne, this really did not move much at all. You still have a put wall there at 600, 590, still a pretty big put wall. Calls here at 606, so in here still makes sense. Total options about the same, put call ratio basically the same. Then moving over to the charts here on the S&Ps, you can see we fell another 1/3% or so. I added this trend here, marked the bottom here and here to see if this gave us something to work with, and it does. We're basically right above that trend line. For tomorrow, it's going to be at the 602.94 area, which is pretty much in line with where we're at right now. Momentum continuing to roll bearish, RSI still rolling bearish. I still think this might go a little bit lower here. Maybe we throw a wick to that 21 EMA, the level in here, 599.64. We'll see if that holds. You also have that longer term trend in there as well, the one we've been talking about for a while. So a couple of trends in here to watch. We'll see if it comes into that zone tomorrow. I do think that it will. And then looking at that hourly chart here just for a moment, you can see 200 SMA in there, which is sitting at 602.09. You got the trend in there. On the hourly chart, it did touch it, so it looks a little bit different here on the hourly. The other interesting thing there is big volume on that last candle, a little bit of a bounce into the after hours based off that candle, so maybe some profit taking on this down move. It's a little extended, but not a lot. Again, I still think we'll probably go a little bit lower. Does that mean we get a bounce first before we go lower, or is it going to go straight down, touch the level, and then bounce? Obviously, that remains to be seen. The other interesting thing here is you do have the 21 EMA crossing below the 144 here in the after hours. So this structure is definitely changing. I'm sure we're still in bearish conditions across the board. Then moving over here to the Tasty charts just for a moment, you can see we did hit that lowest ATR band just for a moment there at 602.11. That's currently sitting at 602 flat. This will continue to trend down. Your next support is going to be that 89 EMA on the 4-hour chart, which is down at 685 cents. We'll see if it touches that tomorrow, but definitely starting to see these roll to the downside at least a little bit. We'll see how short-lived it is. You can see last time we did get a fairly substantial move, did roll down, flattened out before we had that rally. Just getting started here, just a little bit of a topping formation. We'll see if we get the continuation into that full structure change, or if this is just going to be a short-term pullback. And then looking at that NASDAQ charts here, you can see also down about 1/3%, very, very close to this trend line in here. That's what we were watching. We pushed through this zone just like we expected to. Momentum continuing to move down. RSI, probably going to get the touch of that tomorrow. We'll see how that one plays out. Trend support for tomorrow in here at 520.25. Probably going to continue a little bit lower down into this zone here. Maybe not all in one day, but down into that 513, 514 area. My level in there, 514.92. You can also see highly traded zone in there right at these previous highs. My guess is we'll at least get into that zone. Again, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point. And then looking at the Tasty charts here, you can see big wick up, almost touched that ATR trailing stop here in the 526.60 area, but it did start to roll down there a little bit more. So didn't touch the lowest band. The NASDAQ actually held in a little better than the SPY, especially in terms of structure. You can see we're still sitting on top of that 34 EMA here on the 4-hour chart. So NASDAQ continues to outperform with that current support at 520.69. Your next one there is the 55 EMA at 518.17. That's pretty much in line with that lowest ATR band as well. So We'll see if it breaks through there. Again, I suspect that we'll get at least one more leg lower, even if it's just a wick to that level and then a bounce. But I'm a little bit surprised how well it's holding up at that 34 EMA level. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell fell 0.43, the Dow was down 0.31, hit that 21 EMA like we expected it to on the Dow. Russell cut through it. Honestly, I was a little bit surprised by that. Did throw a big wick to the downside. The low of the day was all the way down at 235.92. We ended up bouncing about $1. Still closed below it though. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. I ended up holding that position. We'll talk about it. But it looks okay. There's also decent credits going into the CPI. We'll see how CPI plays. But for now, 21 EMA is your support on the Dow. For the Russell, I'm looking at 235.04. And then below that, you got the trend here, 234.10. Realistically, this is probably still going a little bit lower though. Moving over to the Mag 7, continues to grind along this trend line, throwing wicks to that level, continues to close below it every day over the last 3 days, and you can see 324.23 or so is going to be the trend there for tomorrow. Momentum basically flat, but stepping up just slightly. RSI still super overbought. We'll see if it pushes through here to this upper trend in here. That would give you a target in the 339.90 area, 340 or so. But with how extended we are at this trend and the resistance we've seen over the last 3 days, my guess is this probably sells from here at least a little bit. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, Apple up 0.41, continues to be on a straight rocket ship going up just about every single day. And then you got Microsoft, did throw a wick to the highs, but then it rejected from there, and now you got to step down on momentum. I would expect this to pull back here now to a higher low setup, at least a retest of the SMA, or at least closer to it. But really a retest is what I would be looking for. And with how this is set up here, I'd probably be looking for a retest of the trend in here around 429.67. It's going to need to cover some ground to touch that RSI SMA. You'll see the 21 kind of drift into this area. Maybe we get a touch of that higher low setup continuation if it's going to do it. But I would say this move, at least in the short term, is probably done. Your support is still 440.72, but once that breaks, which I do think it will, you'll have the 9 in there, which is sitting at 435.23. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA, Tesla up again 2.87%. Very, very close to those all-time highs. Did close above the 400 level, so that's a new good close there. Momentum bullish, RSI still bullish, still extended, but continues to look very, very strong. And then NVIDIA continuing to look like a dumpster fire here. So we retraced over through the 21. Big head fake there, hit the level. Gap down, sold. Big fake out again, almost retouched that 21 EMA, could not quite touch it, and then sold off big there. The candle was only 2.69%, 2.7 almost, but with the wide ranging candle from top to bottom, it's a little bit bigger. We've closed below the 55 now. Critical to see if this takes out the neckline. I'm still watching it as a head and shoulders, and I think at this point, once it takes the neckline, we're probably going to head down into that 124.69 area. Moving over to Amazon and Alphabet. Amazon continuing to pull back in time, momentum stepping down, RSI stepping down, kind of the same setup as Microsoft at this point. It's just extended, momentum rolling, look for the retest of the SMA on the RSI. And then Alphabet getting a rocket ship here, 5.32%. This is off the back of news surrounding their new quantum chip. People are pretty excited about that, so big gap up on that. Push through the level 185. It did do that during the session, so you could argue maybe you took that trade. Now that's your support, 185.22. It did rally about another $1.50 from there, $1.20 or so. Now your next target is going to be that 193.31 level, which is your all-time high here on Google, going back to mid-July. Moving over to staples and discretionaries. Staples looking more and more like a bull flag setup, probably going to push back up to this 84.50 area once we get a breakout of this bull flag. Continues to look good. Momentum probably going to roll here tomorrow. Good candle at 0.47. And then looking at discretionaries, continues to reject off of this trend line here. It's a very, very long-term trend line, very powerful trend line. For tomorrow, 233.41. I still expect it to reject from here ultimately. Moving over to Breadth, 20-day Breadth hitting that critical level. We took out the lows back here from the end of October. That ended up being the bottom, and then we saw some rallies from there. interesting. We're in that zone again. It did take about 2 or 3 days before we bounced from there, so we're in here for 1 day now. Momentum still bearish, RSI still bearish. Maybe it goes a little lower to the 28 level. See how it plays. Got here fairly quickly. You can see this last time was a little bit more of a grind. Maybe it goes a little bit lower and then you get a little bit of consolidation in there. Usually you do have some consolidation before the bounce. You can see it here a couple of days before you see those bounces. So we'll see. We only have 1 day here now. And then looking at 50-day, this is the more interesting one. We did jump down to the lows from mid-November. So we got a big gap down through the level. 50-day breadth showing some more weakness. In terms of targets, your next one is going to be the lows back here from the end of October in the 47.40 area. And then you have this trend in here. Let's go ahead and extend that out just a little bit. Trend target in there, 46.60 or so. And then if all of that breaks, 40 is your next level. That's a pretty big critical level. You can see it was really important here in June. And as you work back in time, you can see price does respect this 40 level. Consolidated in here for a long time. We'll see how it plays. I do think this is probably going to go a little bit lower, just like we talked about. We'll see the 20-day maybe hold, dip a little bit. And while this is chopping sideways, you see the 50 decay just a little bit. And then we'll see them bounce from there. And then I would expect to see a lower high setup at this point with how much these have broken down. Moving over to the dollar, you can see the dollar continuing to chop higher here with higher lows and higher highs. Another positive day, but we're finding rejection at that 21 EMA on the daily chart. That is at 106.42. Momentum swinging to bullish, but RSI here still trending lower, still rejecting off that SMA. If it's going to turn down, it needs to do it here, especially with that 21 EMA acting as resistance. Like I've said before, I do really like these kind of setups where you get this kind of choppy action down, come back up, retest the 21, reject from there. Those can be some really strong moves. And if the dollar does do that, that would give some opportunities for equities to go a little bit higher here. Dollar has been strong for the last 3 days straight. My guess is we'll see that start to turn here over the next day or two, but really this is going to be dictated by CPI tomorrow. And then finishing up here with the VIX, it did go a little bit higher, almost hit the 21 EMA, almost hit the 14.7 area. And again, this will be dependent on CPI. If CPI is really bad, we'll probably see this spike up. If it holds in here, we'll probably see this roll down at least a little bit. Then looking at my accounts, I ended up losing about $150, nothing crazy. It says I lost $90 here in my IRA, but really I lost about $10 looking back at yesterday's video. That was with the covered call, the 238 I had yesterday. I rolled down to 237 for tomorrow for $1.27. It says I'm in a small loss there on that position, and that's because we saw the Russell bounce a little bit into the after hours. Not really concerned about it, plenty of flexibility to roll up if we get a good CPI number. And then looking at the Qs, didn't do anything with these. I was really patient. I expected the bounce in the morning. I did not react to that. And then I was steady-handed as markets continued to fall. And then we saw the bounce into the end of the session, into the after hours, and you can see bounce just a little bit into that 521 area for the end of the session. So all of that was perfect for the positions that I had on. Being patient, trying to lose not so much money, about $150 like I said, which with all of this red on the board is a pretty good result. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of the charts today. Are there any charts you want me to look at? Let me know. Or what are you thinking for CPI tomorrow? Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.